Welcome everyone to Charts Focus 1, where we teach you how to work hard and trade smart. You guys saw the title of this video, so let's go ahead and start off with the markets. So last week, we extended our pullback losses to around 4% plus. But thankfully, on Friday, we were able to retrace some of those losses as we closed over 396. Now, thanks to this intermittent pullback that we're experiencing right now, we have actually revisited and retested a very critical area. And where is this area? Well, right around here. On the weekly time frame here, you guys can clearly see that we have revisited a very significant and important breakout point / area. And that area extends from 393.50 to 396. And this is where we're able to see that previous breakout from this huge macro descending channel chart pattern that we've been focusing on for the entire year of 2022 and the first part of this year. And thanks to the rally that we got from December lows, okay, we're able to break over this macro descending level of resistance, which again is derived from this huge macro descending channel, and we're able to go over 400 and ultimately hit almost to our next huge level of resistance at 420. Unfortunately, we weren't able to hit that, but hopefully in the next few coming weeks and months, I hope that we can go back to this previous high point of 418.31 on this weekly candlestick, and ultimately we make a higher high by reaching and retesting this 420 level. Now, with that longer perspective in mind, I am still not seeing any signs of a huge market crash. This pullback has been relatively healthy and constructive. We're still seeing relatively lower volume, right? On average, as we start this pullback, we start to see the average volume fall down as indicated by this orange line. And for the fact that we have come back down to retest the previous breakout area is very, very indicative of what we tend to do during bull markets. And for the fact that on the weekly time frame, we have also come back to retest the 10 SMA and the weekly 50 SMA, tells me that, hey, the market is waiting to see the 21 SMA on the weekly time frame to catch up. And that's also another indicative factor of what a bull market will do to the price action. And so this to me just tells me that, okay, we're looking at a very healthy constructive pullback. All we need to do is break away and continue to move away from our initial breakout point and area, which was from 393.50 to 396. And thankfully, if you go back on the daily time frame, we did that on Friday with a good amount of volume. But again, Friday's volume was only big because we saw that overnight sell-off, right? And we sold off due to that PCE inflation data that came in and the markets got spooked. So on the daily time frame, unfortunately, we have retested the 50 SMA on Thursday, but on Friday we lost it and we closed below it, even though we did try to get back above it. So this tells me two things. Okay, one, we can see further downside, or two, this might have been an overreaction to go below the 50 SMA, and ultimately we can see a bounce this week. And so I'm betting on the second scenario to happen. And so if we do see a bounce, where am I going to see a potential rejection area or resistance level? Okay, so first off, I expect us to reach at least 398 and at maximum 400. All right, now that's a pretty tight range here. That's only a 4-point or even less than 4-point range from Friday's close to this critical whole number level of $400. And the only reason I'm saying that is that, well, after a large move like this to the downside, okay, I expect to see some type of sideways or consolidation or even just simple chop, day-to-day chop. And so I'm going to be very, very conservative with the market action this week and also with our names, which you guys will be seeing the next few minutes. And I'm going to tell myself that the markets will most likely not try to move as much as a lot of the important economic data and etc. came out last week. Now, as a quick summary as well from last week, we saw the daily 10 SMA finally showing us a bearish crossover, right? And what is a bearish crossover? Well, when the 10 SMA crosses below the 21 SMA. So this red line, which is my 10 SMA, has crossed below my light blue line, which is my 21 SMA. So a smaller SMA has crossed below a larger SMA, which indicates there is bearish momentum in the short-term perspective. And we've already been seeing that bearish momentum to the downside, right? As we saw this healthy, constructive pullback. So with all of that in mind, again, I expect at least a small bounce back to 398. And ultimately, if we have enough bullish fervor, I expect us to at least retest 400. And if there's enough momentum and if there's ample support from buyers who want to see at least a retest of the 10 SMA, since we have also been a little bit overextended from this 10 SMA, which is usually with the price here, right? And you guys can clearly see from previous price actions, we tend to see the 10 SMA closely following along with the price, acting as either support or resistance. And so for the fact that we have gone so far away from it, it only makes sense from a technical standpoint that we bounce and ultimately we'll see a retest of the 10 SMA somewhere around $400, especially if we do see very, very tight price action for the entire week, and we ultimately could chop as well. So make sure you guys understand that number one, we have this bearish momentum so far for a short-term perspective since we saw this 10 SMA cross below the 21, and also there can be some very, very good chop as we have found good ample support so far thanks to that previous demand area where we broke out to the upside in the initial 2023 rally that we saw in January. So hopefully you guys remember the levels here, okay? 393, 396, 398, and 400. And let's keep our targets conservative for this week unless the market decides to break over 400, then we can start looking at the other resistance levels like 403.50. Okay, so our first name here is EXTR. So I really wanted to look at this name again, so I'm carrying this one over from last week. And the reason for that is that, well, this name, instead of participating with the overall market price action to the downside, we've just gotten tighter and tighter and tighter right underneath this descending level of resistance. And so we had this intermediate support at 18.50. So we are basically trying to hold this level since last week. And so ultimately, if we do see a failure of this chart pattern, then I would want to see a break below 18.50. However, we haven't been seeing that yet. So I'm still very much bullish on this name as it gets tighter and tighter and tighter. And with all of my major SMAs, the 10, 21, and the 50 coiling, I expect a large impulsive move soon. All right. And whenever I see these SMAs coiling like this, I expect a name to either break to one side, right? And that could ultimately be to the upside since we have been going to the upside. And so the trend is to the upside, and the chart pattern here is very, very bullish as well. And if you guys remember, on a weekly time frame, we have a massive cup and handle here. And if you guys remember, this is our handle right over here, and this is our cup. Very quick drawing. And if we were to fulfill this chart pattern, then we can definitely see a breakout over 29. And again, remember guys, the second long entry that I'm giving you guys will be always, okay, always will be the confirmation entry point. So over $20 will be the ultimate breakout price, and it will give you that 100% confirmation that you need to know that we are breaking out of this cup and handle or just out of this descending level of resistance. But again, if you guys want to get in early, then 19.50 can be your best bet for a long-term entry. You guys just have to remember that if you do get this entry at 19.50 and the price starts to go over 19.50, there's still a very good chance that we reject from 20. Why? Well, we did that multiple times over here, and over here, right? 3 times over here, where we tried to get over 19.50, but ultimately we rejected and we came smacking back down. Okay, so number 2, we have DELL, Dell. So this one's going to be a little bit of a speculative play, even though I'm looking at this one because it's also a very conservative name. It's not considered a growth name. I personally consider this name as a value name, right? I mean, the business is very logical and very sound, and it's one of those very slow growth names relative to its share price. And Dell here has earnings tomorrow. Okay, well, there's an estimate to be tomorrow, but I would assume that it is. And if the earnings is good and the earnings reaction is good, I expect us to see a nice move to the upside. And I want to get in as we're moving to the upside. And so my speculative entry point will be $43. Okay, so 43.10 to be exact. Now, if we do move more than that, then the ultimate confirmation entry point will be 43.80 or simply 44, right? Over 44 as the whole number level. And that could be your long-term confirmation entry point to the upside. And that will ultimately break us out from this huge macro descending level of resistance. Okay. Now, again, for DELL, okay, this is a very, very speculative play for this week. I did not expect you guys to get an amazing trade out of this one unless you catch a potential breakout after earnings are over. And that's exactly what I'm looking for. So I'll keep you guys updated in the Discord. All right. So for number 3, número 3, we have MDT. So again, we're being conservative because MDT is a healthcare name. Specifically, this one, I believe, supplies hospitals with tools. And so MDT here has broken out thanks to that January, or I guess I could just say the early rally that we saw in 2023 from December lows. And so far, thanks to the price action from the overall market, this one also was able to come back and retest a very critical area of previous resistance and turned it into new support by bouncing on top of it for the second time. We did that first here around 82.50, and then we did that on Friday at 82.50 again. And so for this one, I want us to see a very simple entry point, either over 84 as a very early entry point, and also 84 was a major level of resistance in the past here, okay? Or we can wait until we are over the 200 SMA on the daily time frame and ultimately over this descending level of resistance, which I would assume will extend like this in the future as we continue to oscillate within the parameters that this descending trend line has made. So if you guys want that ultimate confirmation, all right, we need to be over the daily 200 SMA, and we've been rejecting it multiple times over here and last week as well, even though we had great earnings report. And so, with earnings out of the way, and for the fact that we have rejected off of the 200 SMA again, including this descending level of resistance trend line, can tell you, especially the entire analysis here, that we just need to wait until we're able to break over the 200 and over this descending level of resistance. And that's the reason why I give you guys that confirmation entry point over $86.50. Okay, our fourth name here is EXAS, so Exact Sciences Corporation. So this one has been a very popular name since it's one of the names in the ARKG, right? ARKG, that's the ticker symbol, and that's from Kathy Wood's ARK Invest company, okay? And it's one of the holdings in the ARKG ETF, right? It's a genomics ETF. And so this one is also involved somewhat in the healthcare sector, except specifically it is a biotech company. And Exas was able to have a very, very large burst in its share price after there was news about one of its clinical trials on blood. I have not done my research yet exactly on what they're doing, but that's something that I've read in the past, and that's what I remember. So I'll make sure to do some more research if you guys want me to do some more research on this one. But overall, thanks to that catalyst, we're able to see a huge run, and ultimately we're now seeing consolidation. And what I like about this name is that as we're consolidating, we're sticking very close to the 10 and 21 momentum SMAs. And on Friday, we're able to retest the 50 SMA. And just recently, this year, in January, early January, we saw the daily 50 SMA crossing over the 200 SMA. And that's usually what we call a golden cross, when we have a smaller SMA crossing over a bigger SMA. But in this case, when the 50 SMA specifically crosses over the 200 SMA, we tend to get a golden cross. And that means in the longer term and perspective, the share price will continue to go up higher and higher and higher. And so far, the short-term SMAs, my 10 and 21, tells me that we're looking at a consolidation. And thanks to that consolidation, we're now forming these two trend lines. And the price is following these two parameters here, right? And we have this descending level of support and descending level of resistance that we've retested 2 times on the resistance and 3 times on the support. So on Friday, we've retested the daily 50 SMA and we formed a doji. So if we're able to bounce from the 50 SMA, we can get an early entry at 61, which has now become a level of resistance. How? Well, thanks to Friday's action, we saw it being a resistance as we rejected from 61, since the high of this Friday's candlestick was 61.14. And so if we're able to reclaim 61 as a new level of support again, we can see a bounce and ultimately a retest of 63 and possibly another retest, a third retest of this descending level of resistance. Now, if you guys want to see a longer term confirmation entry point, it's your best bet that you wait until 64, because I would assume that this name will continue to consolidate within the parameters set by these two trend lines. And if that does happen, then ultimately I would want to see the price continuously going down in a general downtrend, but at the same time oscillating and ultimately respecting 61 to 63 and eventually breaking over 64. Now, this is just a wild prediction, all right? Do not think that this name is going to follow the exact path that I just drawn, but it is one of the many possibilities for this name. And another possibility could very well be where we bounce away from the 50 SMA this week and we break away from 63 and ultimately we break over 64, and then we get that breakout over this descending level of resistance if we have enough volume. And that can happen just this week. All right, so for our fifth name here, we have AVTR. And just by the looks here, the very first look on the daily time frame, what do we have? We have a bull flag, or what we like to call a wedge. And this wedge looks pretty bullish to me, since a wedge chart pattern gives you two opportunities, one to the long side or one to the short side. It just has to break either way. And in this case, it looks bullish. Why? Well, as we're forming this wedge, we continued to stay above the 10 and the 21 SMA without breaking to the downside. And as we're now getting very, very close to the converging points of these two trend lines, the ascending support trend line and this descending level of resistance trend line, there has to be some sort of break. Okay, the price is getting very, very tight as we are staying above both the 10 and 21 SMAs. So I'm betting that we can see a long-term entry point once we're able to break over this wedge chart pattern and, okay, the daily 200 SMA, which is now looming right over the price. And so even if we did not have this trend line drawn, you can clearly tell what is literally pushing the price down. And that is the daily 200 SMA. All right, so every single time the price tries to break over or tries to make a new high compared to the previous high, we get smacked down and we make lower highs. And this type of price action with lower highs is what ultimately caused us to see and make this descending trend line of resistance. And so again, if you guys want to see a confirmation entry point to the long side, 25 or over 25 will be good because that will also mean that the daily 200 SMA will be underneath the price and the price has finally remounted this huge level of an SMA. And the SMA will continue to go down and down and down as it's been so far, and you guys can clearly see that it's still curling down. And so again, if you guys want that confirmation entry point to the long side, wait until we remount the 200 SMA, which could be around 25. And then once you're able to hold over 25 and over the 200 SMA, that will be your entry point. All right, so our last name is PODD. Okay, so this is our sixth name. So this one is quite an expensive name. However, I really like what I'm seeing here. So in the weekly time frame, we have another, yet again, a cup and handle chart pattern, except this is such a textbook chart pattern. And this is usually what you will see on the technical analysis books. And if this chart pattern plays out, we can see some very, very multi-week gains as it breaks out of the handle and ultimately over to new all-time high levels. And so if we go back on the daily time frame, we had earnings last week and we were able to see a nice gap up between Thursday and Friday as earnings was on Thursday after hours. However, we completely filled in that large gap up to the upside and then some more, and we revisited Thursday's low. So obviously, from a short-term perspective, that looks bearish. And that's the reason why I'm giving you guys this name as a name to put on your own long-term watch list. Because if this name breaks out, again, we can see multi-week gains as it continues to move to the upside and into new all-time highs. So if we get to see a hold of all the major SMAs, since we were trying to lose it on Friday, the 10, 21, and 50, which are now also coiling, just like how EXTR is, we can ultimately see an impulsive move to either side. But in this case, I want it to be bearish because, sorry, not bearish, bullish, because the fact that we have this huge macro cup and handle chart pattern that you can see on a weekly time frame, and we're still within this handle of that cup and handle, which is also a micro descending channel. So we have confirmation with two bullish chart patterns, one macro cup and handle and one micro descending channel. So this one, I will continue to stay bullish until we break below 280, which was a huge level of resistance while we were forming this huge round cup. And if we break below 280 and we stay below 280, then that is it. this chart pattern will be negated. Well, actually, both of these two chart patterns will be negated. The macro cup and handle and the micro descending channel. Now, if we have some luck this week and we decide to continue to bounce up higher and we completely negate Friday's price action, especially after such a great earnings report from this name, you guys can see a very early entry point over 300. This is a very, very critical number, right? It is the next whole number, right? The next 100 number from 200, right? It's another $100 gain from 200. And so if we're able to break over 300, there will definitely be a very, very wild reaction to the upside. How do I know this? Well, just take a look at the previous data, right? The previous week's data. Every single time we went over 300, we saw a very, very nice pop over 300. Now, obviously, we've been rejecting 300 so far. How do I know this? By looking at the previous data points again. And if you want to avoid all of that chop, look for a confirmation entry point over 310.20 or the previous high of the day. And what was the previous high of the day? Well, it was on Friday's candlestick, and the previous high of the day was 311.93, which means your confirmation long-term entry point will be over $312. And ultimately, if we do break over 312, then I would love to see a retest of the previous high pivot points, which was 316.44 and 320, and then ultimately a retest of this major weekly level resistance at 324.50. Okay, so good luck with these names. All right, that is it for this video. If this technical analysis video was insightful, make sure you leave a like down below. And if you aren't subscribed yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button below as well. Good luck, and I'll see you all tomorrow in the live stream. Thank you for watching.